Welcome back to Win With Nabs. Today, we're hyped to bring you President Asim, a two-time kickboxing world champ, BJJ and judo black belt, and the big brain behind KarateCombat and the Pit Submission series. This guy's not just throwing kicks, he's running Goat Shed as CEO and turning fight leagues into global gold mines. From the ring to the boardroom, he's got that awesome factor dialed up to 11. Thanks for joining us, man. Let's unpack the legend that's President Asim. Thanks for coming on the show today.
I appreciate it, man. Pleasure.
Spit truth for the fighters. Tighten your straps, no pain, no gain. Feel the thunder in the rap. Win with Nabs, hear the bell, we don't fold. Legends rise here, stories always told. Retro grit fusion, hip hop, souls bold. Victory is ours, let the saga unfold.
I saw a clip just the other day on Instagram that we had to talk about. So you were choking a guy out in the KarateCombat pit, and some of the comment section were like, he's the president, he's not a fighter. I was also a little confused. I was like, what's happening? He said something about like, he attacked your wife. So what happened there?
So basically, we had a fight, and I'm talking about like it was a Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner fight where they were just going at it. A lot of heat before leading up to the fight, and it was a very controversial decision. Could have gone either way. After the fight, the winner started showboating, and the coach didn't like that at all. So the coach started having words with him back and forth and decided to jump inside the pit to attack him. And they just went to war. So the fighter jumped out of the pit. He didn't want anything of it. He's like, hey, what are you doing right now? I just fought 5 rounds. I don't want to do this. So he jumped outside of the pit. The coach was chasing this guy, and security could not get a hold of him. Everyone was jumping on him, and he's slipping away. And the guy was a fighter, too. He's not just a coach. The guy's a professional fighter, a very good fighter. So he kept escaping everybody. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I got to put an end to this. So I took him down. I put him in a choke. It's the safest way to subdue an opponent. I trained law enforcement and military for 9 years. Put him to sleep, lied him down, and he was out. After that, the police came. They wanted to arrest him. I said, please don't arrest this guy. He just lost his cool. I invited him back to our next event, and he actually fought that gentleman later on down the road. We set up a fight so they could finally settle it in the pit.
So let me get this straight. You, as the CEO of the company, nobody, the security couldn't stop him. The fighter couldn't stop him. You submitted a professional fighter. You're just the CEO. You're just there for your event.
Yes, and I guess it shows that sometimes, leaders got to lead from the front, Lead
by example.
Exactly. And one thing is I wanted to make sure he didn't feel like, I took advantage of the situation. So I made sure after I put him unconscious, I talked to him. I said, look, if you want your revenge, we can meet in the pit later on when the cameras are gone, everyone's gone. You can pick any combat sport you want. We'll spar and we'll settle it. And I wanted to give him that opportunity,
Was he chill about it after?
He was he was very chill.
That's good to hear.
He said, thank you. I saw red. I wouldn't have stopped unless you did that. Thank you for not hurting me. And he was very respectful about everything. And he actually didn't want to spar. He said, no, don't worry about it. I understand.
Which choke did you put him in?
I put him in a rear naked strangle from the back. That usually takes between 2 to 6 seconds to sleep him. So I counted 1, 2, 3, out. Okay, put him down.
That's a crazy story. So let's take it back. Let's rewind to the start.
By the way, if that wasn't in Florida, maybe I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? The laws in Florida are a little different.
We're allowed to do that here. It's a little different. Nobody cares. Miami, different things fly here.
Definitely.
Different rules.
Definitely.
And if it didn't happen on Instagram, it didn't happen. So the world saw it. So
Oh yeah. It was number one.
Popular.
It was number one trending on Twitter.
I saw it on multiple different platforms.
Yep.
And so I had to change. I was like, I have to talk about this. So let's rewind to the start. Let's talk about your past a little bit. So 2 kickboxing world titles. That's no joke. So what lit that fire for you, and how did you get into fighting?
Well, I started training at 3 years old. My father was my coach.
3 years old?
Yeah, 3 years old. My father's a black belt. He was the assistant to an Olympic coach, actually, Master Young Sudo. So he was doing Taekwondo. My mother is a competitor as well.
Oh, wow.
In martial arts, my uncles too.
So just the whole family,
it was a family of martial artists.
Sparring with your uncles at family gatherings.
Yeah. There's a video you can find online. I'm 3 years old. My dad's teaching me actually a low kick to a spinning back kick combination. It's a really cool video. He was my first coach. And as I got older, I was around 9, 10 years old. The UFC came out. And when I saw
that must have been the coolest thing ever.
Oh, but it was nuts because it was a whole different world. I saw guys with all these different martial arts backgrounds. And then Hoist Gracie, a jiu-jitsu instructor, came in and he just finished everybody. And he was doing techniques we've never seen in our lives. And instantly I'm like, you know what? That's the martial art I want to do. And my dad said, don't do it. It's fake. It's not a real martial art. I said, no. I researched online. I found a Gracie Academy. And my first day walking to the gym, Royce Gracie was there and his father.
Wow.
It was unbelievable.
So you got to learn from the original jiu-jitsu greats. I mean, like, there's no other way to put it. Those guys were just dominating OG UFC.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had these massive guys. You had Royce Gracie, who's much smaller, still being able to put them to sleep.
It was an unbelievable.
In the gi.
In the gi, no rules, no time limits, no gloves, nothing, no weight class. It was so unbelievable to see. I had to train with him. My first class, I trained with his father and him. There's pictures of us sparring. I took countless privates with Helio Gracie, one of the founders, co-creators of Jiu-Jitsu, and with Royce. My black belt's from Royce. Very loyal to those guys.
So your fighting base has been around for just so long. Let's talk a little about your kickboxing world title experiences. What promotion did you get your kickboxing titles in, and what were those fights like?
So it was pretty cool. I won multiple kickboxing titles, and the type of kickboxing I did was called Sanda. Sanshao. It's actually Shazab's background. So the rules are, it's kickboxing with takedowns. It's really, really cool, and it translates very well to MMA.
Kind of like combat sambo, a little bit
Very
similar.
Very similar. No grappling, but it's striking with takedowns. Really exciting sport, you know? Very big in Europe, very big in Asia. So we have to travel around, fight everywhere. You know, I went to China. I trained in the national team for a long time. I competed actually in their national invitational. I fought in Italy for the world championship in Italy against Azerbaijan, which was a terrifying fight. Thank God, you know, I came out victorious.
Well, you're here today, so.
Yeah, I'm here. I survived. That guy was terrifying, by the way. The world championship in Italy, that was the biggest fight I had. At that time, I was 23-0 in kickboxing. 22, 23-0 in kickboxing, something like that. And the guy I fought, I'll never forget, he had 120-something wins,
oh my God,
20 losses, way more experience than me. He was terrifying.
It's like when you're playing a video game. It's like the final boss at the health bar is massive.
Yes. No, it was like
you
that.
See that
and
record.
Azerbaijanis are just scary looking. I don't know. He looked like a monster, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, I got to fight this guy. And in the locker room, he was staring at me. He was looking at me through the door. I was terrified. But we pulled it off. It was on Eurosport. But back then, there wasn't as much media around combat sports. So it didn't...
How old were you at the time?
I was 22, probably, around there. 22 years old.
I mean, also just the exposure to, I guess, fight sports around the world, like that wasn't in the United States. I just feel like it wasn't in the sphere of, like you said, the media, because it's very America-centric in terms of combat sports dominance. I think now you're seeing a much bigger audience of like One and all these different promotions, KarateCombat, right? And you're seeing that all these different leagues, even the UFC, are trying to expand their base to outside the United States.
Yep.
And because it's just such a big addressable market. And what you're seeing now is you have all this media coverage, but I would imagine back then, like you said, like nobody, even if the market is there's not that much coverage for it.
No,
and
not
if you're
at
fighting
all.
in Italy, obviously you're not going to get a crazy amount of coverage.
No, of course not. I mean, all the fights back then weren't really covered like that. Even back then, I would say UFC wasn't the king of MMA back then. It was Pride. Everyone wanted to go to Pride. You know, that was the talk.
Rampage Jackson, all those guys. Yeah,
Wanderlei Silva, Rampage Jackson, Mirko Cro Cop, Fedor. It was like
some great fights in Pride.
Yeah, it was the best back then. And then UFC took over, and obviously Dana White's just a genius, and he really made it mainstream. Now, fights all over the world are getting coverage, great coverage. But back then, you know, none of us got that coverage.
So you were a fighter, but at some point you made the transition to coach. And I would argue, based on everything you just said, you had potential to just go on and keep fighting, probably maybe even become a UFC title holder or whatever. What made you make that shift? Because you have all this potential in fighting, but you chose to take the coaching route, which is a very different path.
I'll tell you this, there's many parts to this as to why I switched from fighter to coach. The main thing was I lost the fire, you know, and training my fighters, I realized that they had more of a fire and desire than I had. And I cared more about their careers than my own. And I'll never forget because there was a time where I was coaching and fighting at the same time. And that's where I sort of had a decline. I was coaching and fighting at the same time. You know, I was trying to do my own camps.
Stretching yourself too thin.
It was just not the way to do it, you know? And I didn't have a coach above me to hold me responsible at that time. I was coaching myself. It was just no good. It was not a professional.
Wait. You were coaching yourself.
At one point, after the Kickboxing World Championship, my coach moved back to Sweden. when he moved back to Sweden, in Miami, I didn't relate to any coach, and I started coaching myself. You know,
How does that work? Do you just like film yourself and you look at film of yourself like sparring or past fights and stuff like that, or like what do you mean? Like how do you coach yourself?
I mean, essentially, I was a great coach to my students, so I would watch myself, study my opponent, make the game plan, make the routines. But the thing is, when you're coaching yourself, naturally as humans, we want to take the easiest route. And when you're training for a fight, often you need a coach to be real with you and sometimes give you the harder route. Sometimes the easiest route isn't the right way, you know? So that's the mistake of running your own camp. You want to do this, you want to do that, you want to do that. So you're doing what you want rather than doing what you need. That's a very, very big difference. So that was the downfall. And what ended up happening was this. I was coaching and fighting at the same time. And actually my wife at the time, you know, she was my girlfriend at the time. And we got into an argument and she's like, you need to grow up. Do you want to be a fighter or do you want to be a coach? You're not being the best coach you can be because you're trying to fight at the same time. You're not being the best fighter you can be because you're trying to coach at the same time. And she dumped me, left me for 9 months. I chased after her. I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, you need to grow up. So I really worked on myself and tried to figure out what I want to do with my life. And at that moment is when I realized, okay, I'm going to fully commit to coaching. I'm going to open up the goat shed and I'm going to go this route, you know, and I'm going to fully commit to being the best coach I can possibly be. And that's where we went. And it was life changing, you know, and thank God my wife was my inspiration for that. And it really led me to the path I'm on now.
I mean, I think what's beautiful about that story is you can only be a fighter for so long, right? So let's say, so it was a couple of years ago that you decided to make this big shift. Maybe you had another 7-8 years left in your career, but realistically, you could be a coach for decades. You could be a coach for a very, very long time, right? And especially some of the best coaches are the older you get because you have all this experience, you've seen all these fights, you've been a fighter yourself, all this experience, right? You're the best coach you can possibly be. I think it's just such a beautiful thing that you're like, you know what? I get more joy from helping other people out than advancing my own career. I think it's a very powerful thing. And
it's very strange. You're right. That's what it is.
I would imagine, I mean, it's a very different thing. So I'd mentioned earlier that I do debate, and one of my biggest prides, one of my biggest joys is being able to coach the younger students and younger competitors on our team. Another thing is that in Boy Scouts, I'm the leader of my troop, and every meeting we open with the color guard, which is like you do the flags, you do the Pledge of Allegiance, the Scout Oath, you do a prayer, all that stuff. And for whatever reason, the scouts always get scared when there's because there's a person who has to call it, right? So there's people walking, and then there's a person who's like color guard, forward march, color guard, whatever. And something that I noticed is no one ever wants to do it. And it's a different patrol, and patrols are like by grade, so 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever. And so it's usually 6th or 7th graders who are like scared to do it. And I always am like, okay, who wants to do it? Like, who wants to call it? Not move the flags, who wants to do it? And none of them ever want to do it. So something I've recently started doing is like, okay, I'm just like, Johnny, you're doing it. He's like, no, I can't do it. I'm scared. I don't want it. What if I mess up? And I'm like, dude, I'm right behind you. I'll rehearse it with you before. And if you mess up, nobody cares. You're like 12. And also the only way, but it's true, right? The only way you're going to get better is if you try. And if you mess up, it's not the end of the world, but you'll get public speaking experience and you'll get over that fear. And I just feel like there's something so powerful in being that coach, because when that kid, just using Johnny as an example name, but when some of those scouts do it and they execute it well, and even when they mess up, I'm just so proud of them for stepping outside of their comfort zone. And I feel like the older I get, I mean, I'm talking like I'm an old guy, I'm really not. I'm only 17, but like I feel like the older that I get, I feel so much happier, so much fulfillment from being able to help out younger people and stuff like that. So like in coaching roles or being a leader and whatever, but just like I just love that. So for me, the fact that I can relate to you in that you have this whole coaching experience where like you had this moment where you're just like, you know what, I like helping other people. I'm great at my craft, but at the end of the day, I can't do this forever, but I can coach for a very, very long time.
Exactly. And I made some very big mistakes leading up, you know, to where I decided to move to coaching. I made some big mistakes in my career, but those mistakes I'm correcting with my students. I never let them make the same mistakes I made. Like, for example, I told you that during my training, I was always taking the easiest path. I was doing what I wanted, not what I needed. I was doing what I wanted, what felt good. My training today with my students doesn't feel so good.
It's rough.
It's very rough. There's a lot of high pressure situations. To be honest, I'll tell you this. One of the biggest problems fighters make when they try to run their own camp, they write down what they're going to do and they walk into the gym and they know what they're going to do. Hey, I'm going to do 3 rounds of this, 4 rounds of that, 5 rounds of that. The fight, you don't know anything. You don't know what's going to happen in the fight. My fighters do not know what's going to happen in training that day.
Really? So they don't get any warning?
No, they do not.
Even if it's
nothing.
they don't know if it's an easy day, because obviously there has to be some like easier. They don't know if it's gonna be a super hard day where you're going like full throttle or stuff like that.
Helicopter view, it's the same thing, same schedule every week. Helicopter view. But when you get into the details, it can change a lot. For instance, if we have a sparring day, a fighter might come and be like, okay, I have 3 5-minute rounds, because MMA is 3 5-minute rounds, right? I'll put them in the cage. They'll do a round, 5 minutes. They'll do a second round, 5 minutes. They'll do the third round, it's 10 minutes. I never told them anything. Or they'll come up to me and they'll tell me, hey, coach, I only have 2 rounds in me today. I'm like, okay, no problem. I make sure that last round is 15 minutes. We did 2 rounds. You told me you had 2 rounds. I gave you 5 and 15. I don't concede to anything they want, because the fight is not going to be that. You know, there's a guy, I love this student. We call him the main character. He has main character syndrome. He thinks everything's about it, but he's great. We all love him for it, you know? He came up to me, he's like, Asim, I know it's sparring day, but you know, my shoulder's kind of hurt. You ever had that where your shoulder goes numb? I say, yeah, I have that all the time. My shoulder goes numb. Yeah, I used to have that. Yeah. Okay, guys, go in the cage over there. I don't.
Still got to fight.
You still got to fight. Because I don't know what it is about combat sports. These fighters, everything goes wrong fight week. Nothing works out. Your weight cut was bad. You rehydrated, but you ate too much. You feel full. You're late to the fight. They're wrapping your hands. You don't have enough time to warm up. Nothing goes right. It's very strange. Your mind has to be so strong, because the variables aren't going to be what you think they are. So you just have to be ready for everything. So if a fighter comes up to me, I'm not feeling it today. Oh, really? That's great, because I need you to get used to sparring
when you're not feeling it. When you're not feeling it.
Because one day you're going to fight and you're not going to feel it. So I need you to do that. So what ends up happening is the training camps at Goat Sheds are so intense. I get a lot of people quitting on me. I've lost a lot of fighters that were 13-1, 10-0, 9-0, plenty. These are real people I'm naming. 7-1. Like, we have unbelievable records, and they leave. And the same thing.
Crazy.
We call it it happens every time. They leave, they lose 2 fights, they get choked out, they get knocked out. Something happens, they don't fight for 2 years, whatever happens, and then they come back. And especially right now with the success Goat Shed is having and the success I'm having, all 90%, these guys that left,
90%. I saw them.
Come on.
90% win rate. That's
90%
impressive.
win ratio.
Crazy.
90%. In the UFC, we're 14-3. You know, when I first opened up and we had a 90% win ratio on year 1, all the other gyms were like, yeah, but they're fighting low-level fights. We're in the UFC now. We're killing it. We have top 10 fighters. We have multiple top 10 fighters.
You have world champions in other promotions as well.
That's what I'm saying.
You know?
No, we're doing
Solid.
great.
That's
and
awesome.
It's such a pleasure to train these types of athletes. So the guys that stick with us and follow the program, you can bet that these are the hardest workers in the room. They're willing to sacrifice anything. The guys that stay in my gym that can survive a training camp with me, these guys are animals. They really are.
No, I'd imagine, especially not knowing anything. Going into, you don't know if it's sparring day, you don't know if it's weight, you don't know what you're doing when you're with President Awesome, but you just know it's gonna be some hard work.
Oh yeah.
So KarateCombat has had this meteoric rise, like super quickly. The popularity has gotten massive. Like, I don't think there's any other way to put it, and it just happened all so fast. So you made this transition from a coach to a CEO and a business guy. So what was it like starting this and creating this MMA phenom? Like, I don't know any other way to put it.
I mean, it was nuts. You know, like the transition, there's so much to it. It's really crazy, really intricate. I would say it's even more complex than when I first got into it, I didn't know what I was getting into. That's the best way to phrase it. When I first became KarateCombat president, I didn't know exactly what I was signing up for.
Just a couple guys sparring, messing around.
Because look, many times these presidents are just faces. They don't really do much. A lot of combat sports is like that, and they have a whole thing behind them. We're making calls and shots on everything. And I'll never forget my first exec chat. You know, we get in there, I'm on a Zoom call with like 30 people, we're all talking. And then all of a sudden they're like, they turn to me, they're like, hey, so what do you think about this? And I'm like, what do you mean? This is my decision? They're like, yeah, it's your decision. Very quickly, I got thrown into a big position and I had to make some moves. And we did a fantastic job. I mean, KarateCombat is definitely mainstream. I would say it's a top 5 destination league for a fighter. You want to make money in combat sports as a fighter, you have to fight in our league. You know, it's probably going to be, I would say it's going to be UFC, PFL, BKFC, KarateCombat, and K1 pays very well, but it's more in Asia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One championship pays like 3 people. You know, like everybody else is kind of like they fight once a year.
Just like Raw Tank.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like most of the guys
DJ.
fight like one. I mean, there's so many fighters that reach out to me that haven't fought in 3 years, 4 years.
Real in one?
Yes.
That's crazy.
It's madness. No, it's madness where fighters now are protesting, trying to get out, but these guys won't release them. So there's a whole mess going on there. So if you want to make money in combat sports, it's going to be UFC, PFL, KarateCombat, BKFC, and probably K1. I think that's where you're at.
So I have to ask a couple of different things. One, where did the pit come from?
So the pit was a genius idea.
I think everyone loves the pit.
Everyone.
Because I mean, as a fan, like it's open. It's not like there's a closed cage. It's open.
It's the best platform for any combat sport. It's the best for jiu-jitsu, striking, MMA. It's the best for anything. And it increases the finish rate of fights by so much. For example, our last event at KarateCombat, I believe we had 10 fights and 9 finishes. That's a 90% finish rate. Now, I'll give you a secret that only promoters know. This is what they do. This is outside UFC. I'm not talking about UFC. I'm not talking about the major, like the big time promotions, right? They're making the best fights possible. KarateCombat's trying to make the best fights possible. Most organizations, what they do is they get a B-side fighter that's not very good, right? And they get an A-side fighter. So that way they get a clean knockout. It's not a fake fight, but they set up this terrible B-side fighter.
They know he's not going to win.
This guy's from like some middle of nowhere, small gym somewhere, and they put him against this killer, and they're able to score a knockout. This isn't like a real thing. With KarateCombat, we're putting the best against the best now.
And that's what people want to see.
That's what people want to see, and you will still see the finishes. The decisions are so rare, and in big part is because of the pit. And I'll explain it to you. In MMA, 30% of the fight is stalled on the fence.
Yeah, they'll grab the fence. They'll put their fingers through.
They're hanging
slip their toes under the mat.
If they're tired, they
things.
stall there. They wait there. They breathe. They take a breather. I teach my fighters to do that. Oh, we're gassed out. Put them on the fence. Catch your breath. It's a way to stall. In the pit, you can't stall. You're at a 45-degree slant. If you fall on that pit, you're gonna get TKO'd. You have to get off. So that forces the fighter to move forward. Then the other fighters moving
just constant
forward.
pressure.
Oh my God, it's straight
That's
action.
why I love watching the KarateCombat fights, because even if you think about, it's so funny how fight sports are scored. I remember in the first Bivol Beterbiev fight, there was so much controversy surrounding like the decision win for Beterbiev, and I was talking to my coach. He's like, people, okay, strikes, numbers, whatever, but at the end of the day, who's moving forward in the fight and who's moving back? It doesn't best defense, right? Not getting hit. Right, all of these different things. But if somebody's moving forward and somebody's moving back, it doesn't matter what the numbers look like, because people like to see pressure. Judges like pressure. Fans like pressure. Everyone likes pressure.
You're right.
Right? So it's just like if you have so much dead time in other fighting promotions versus it's open, it's a pit. And the other thing that I love about KarateCombat is for those title fights, there's a 6th round. It's like a overtime in like football or basketball.
Yes.
It's like, okay, we're tied. We're gonna keep fighting.
We got a sudden death round. And look, if a fight's normal fight's 3 rounds, right? There's still a sudden death round. It can go a 4th. We don't do split decisions. If it's a split decision or a draw, there's a sudden death round. And that's how we make sure there's no controversy. We want to eliminate controversy. You lost fair and square, and nobody can argue that. So that's a evolution that we sort of put into KarateCombat.
I think it's just such a fresh take on the sport, and like how it changes so much, because I mean what you see now in the UFC is, and on all these other different promotions, this isn't really a fault of the UFC. This is just more of a critique of like athletic commissions. There's so many poor judging calls these days. Like I've seen so many fights. I think every fight fan has been annoyed so many times, especially in the past like 2 years, with some of the decisions that we've seen across the board, and like some of these split decision fights that I think should be unanimous for one fighter, but the judges score 2-1 for the other, and I'm just like, how did this happen, right? I don't know how disputable this one is, but there was still a lot of controversy around the Ank fight and Pereira. I know a lot of people think Pereira won. I could have seen it going either way, so I wasn't particularly upset about that, but I know a lot of people were upset about that. But just in general, there's a lot of very questionable decisions, which is why I just love the fact that you guys are just like, you know what? We're done with all of that. We're just going to add another round. And nobody can contest that, because if they're tied already, it doesn't change anything.
Nothing.
And if we want to say someone was winning before that, but they lost that final round, well, it doesn't really matter, because it was controversial anyways.
So you're a really educated fan. So you said a lot of very, very, very good things. One thing you said that most people don't know, you spoke about how the commission is separate than the promotion. A lot of people don't know that. So, for example, if there's a controversial decision, it's not the UFC's fault.
No, it's not the UFC's fault.
People don't. The common fan, the casual fan, has no idea.
They blame Dana. I'm
They're
like, what
Dana
are you doing?
White. Yeah, they're like Dana White wanted him to win. It's like, dude, that's not what's happening
Because
right
if
now.
that was the case, then they could just rig fights, which they
Exactly.
don't. They can't.
Exactly.
There's a commission.
But I don't know why. That needs to be talked about more. More people need to know that. The casual fan has no idea. Promotion is separate than the state commission. Separate. The referees are chosen by the state commission. The judges are chosen by state commission. And it's a way to, like you said, make sure that there's no bias, right?
Of course. And so I actually do have a question for that. So I know for different combat sports, there's different rules and regulations. Especially, I know there's a lot of concerns about bare knuckle fighting and how they're able to organize fights. Because in some states, I'm pretty sure it's still illegal. So at least for KarateCombat, where there's an open pit and it's a different concept, how has it been in working across the globe, but also in the United States, and figuring out where you're going to set up fights? Because I imagine there's not are there sports commissions for the type of fighting that there is for KarateCombat in particular right now, like all across the U.S.?
We all use the boxing commission, MMA too. So boxing commission's used for everything. So they handle MMA, they handle KarateCombat.
Really? So it's the box? I didn't know that.
So essentially what happens is, and they have a team, right? These are the judges for MMA, these are the judges for boxing, but it's the same commissions. Florida, like for example, for Florida, it's Florida Boxing Commission, handles all these sports. And the way they talk about KarateCombat, I guess, or the way they classify it is, it's modified MMA rules to them. Because essentially, it's very similar rules to MMA, except no submissions, right? No holding. So they classify it as modified MMA. They don't call it KarateCombat. They say modified MMA. And that's how they do it, and they train the judges and the referees for that.
So we said his name once already, but I want to say your name, Dana Brown. I saw it. You said in an Instagram post, you referred to yourself as Dana Brown, obviously a play on Dana White. So can you talk a little bit about that? Where did that gag come from?
So it's so funny. Look, this all came very suddenly. You have to understand, I'm a coach of a great team, but we're a very small team. You know, we're a 3,000 square foot gym. I'm the head coach of the Goat Shed. We're a viral team on social media, but I went from that to being the president of a top 5 league on the planet. You know what I mean? So it was a big jump. And when that happened, I'll never forget. I was in the car with a bunch of my fighters, my OGs. They're my students for 7 years. And I'm driving, and one of my guys, his name's Ryan Coos. We're driving in. And he's like, you know what? You're the Dana White of KarateCombat. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. I'm like, I guess you're right. And he goes, actually, you're the Dana Brown.
I love that. I love that.
We loved it.
Dana Brown.
Dana Brown. So the idea was we shake up everybody. We cause some controversy. Call myself Dana Brown. Transition to President Awesome, and transition to President Asim. And then one day, hopefully, people will just know me as Awesome. So there's like a little marketing
bit of a transition.
transition.
That's smart.
And we're going through. So I went from Dana Brown. Now people are saying President Awesome.
And I would imagine
awesome,
it worked
awesome.
for the media part. It definitely worked because
Great.
Everyone saw that. That is awesome.
They love it. They think it's hilarious. You know, so both are working very well, and it's all to slowly educate them on who I am. And from President Awesome, eventually I want my name Awesome to get in there. And then once people start calling me Awesome, it's like, great. That's what I wanted to be called the whole time, you know?
You're going to get there for sure.
Yeah.
So I do have to ask then, Dana Brown, President Awesome. Which nickname?
Man, I love Dana Brown. I think it's hilarious.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
It's too funny. It's too funny. I love it. Dana Brown is definitely a funny one. I see Dana White a lot. Every time I corner in the UFC, I see him pretty much, every time I corner. And I corner in the UFC every other month. So I see him. We haven't discussed KarateCombat yet. We haven't discussed Dana Brown yet. I'm waiting for him to come up to me and just say something about it. That's what I want to do. I want to really earn that, acknowledgement, and then one day have him come up to me like, okay, that's hilarious.
So I know they've never done one in the past, but do you see any potential in the future for a super fight between a KarateCombat fighter and a UFC fighter? Is that something you guys are trying to work on?
I think that the crossover matchup sometimes, I think that everyone should stick to their sport a little bit. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't want to do that. UFC versus KarateCombat, the champions versus each other. They're different sports, just like boxing. The crossovers, they never really...
never works out for the boxer. Well,
Yeah.
when the boxer crosses over, it never works out.
When the boxer crosses over, it's impossible. The MMA guy will put up a fight, but it's just like, not so much that. You know what I would love? I would love to somehow work with Dana White on this. I would love to somehow... have him come to an event and support us. And that's why I work so closely with the UFC. That's why KarateCombat, we're constantly giving the respect to the UFC because they led the way in MMA. I want to lead the way in striking. I know my lane. I'm not trying to touch MMA. That's Dana White's the king over there. I want to be the king over here. I want KarateCombat to be the top of the top for striking.
I love that. So, of striking, you scrapped with, I think, one of the best strikers in the world, Alex Pereira. We talked about him a little bit earlier. And what was that like?
Well, what happened was actually, I feel that there's a whole new audience watching KarateCombat, and a lot of guys are wondering what my background is. And one thing is, I'm very close with every fighter we work with. Like, there's no way a promoter on the planet can relate to a fighter more than I can. I lived this, I slept in my gym.
A lot of promoters, they're just like, they're business guys, but they're not fighters.
Exactly. So I know what the struggle is like, right? I fought before. I've traveled the world. I've done training camps. I've cut weight. I know everything. So I can relate with fighters on that way. So what happens is I develop a very close relationship with all of our fighters. So all of our fighters, yes, they love the money they're making at KarateCombat. They love the popularity, but there's also
like a family.
Yes,
almost.
Yes. There's a sense of loyalty, a sense of family, and they know I get them. They know when they tell me, hey, I'm going through a hard time right now. They know I'm going to understand what that means, and I can go ahead and help however I can. So one thing I started doing to show the audience that, hey, look, I'm about it with these guys is I want to start sparring all the fighters the whole year. Any top level fighter come through, we'll spar, we'll punch each other, because what happens is the friendship you develop when you're sparring is a different type of friendship. There's a trust there. Hey, I'm going to punch you. I'm not going to hurt you, but I'm going to punch you in the face. You're going to punch me. I trust you that you're not going to knock me out, but we're going to work together. And there's this sense of trust in a relationship, a bond that you get once you spar somebody. And when Alex Pereira was there, for me, he's the most terrifying fighter in the UFC.
I mean, just watching him is like...
The most terrifying. His aura is just terrifying. So I said, you know what? I'm scared right now. I have to do this. I want to do something I'm scared of. And I had nightmares the whole night before. I promised you. I was like, oh my God. I was waking up in the middle of the night. I'm got to spar.
So you knew in advance it was happening.
Yeah. I went up to him and said, hey, let's spar Wednesday. I was like, we got to do this. And the night before, I was so scared. I was waking up sweating. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing right now. And my wife was really scared. Asim, what are you doing? You can't do this. You're done fighting. You're not a fighter anymore. She was really, really scared for me. I said, no, I got to do this. And God forbid if I get knocked out, I'm going to go out swinging. It's okay. Show some courage. And I went there, and it was such a great sparring, and he loved it. And, we got to show each other our different techniques, our different skills.
You learned the left hook?
Well, you know what's crazy? I prepared the whole night in my dreams for this left hook, and he didn't throw it on me. He kept landing his right hand on me. And it was a total surprise. I was ready for the left hook. I was ready to counter the left hook. He kept landing the right hand. He had a magnet in his right hand for me. Maybe it was because I was so prepared for the left hook, I was over, compensating. And I had my hand high.
You were fighting with the left hand in mind.
I was. Yeah. And then that right hand, wow. But that sparring video is hilarious. It's viral.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And he took care of me. We had a great time. We bonded a lot. I'm very close to him, his coach, and his sister. Very close.
That's awesome. So you had that great experience, and let's shift a little bit.
Wait, one thing I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
Because we talked a lot about Alex Pereira, but I got to tell you this. His sister is living up to the hype.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Can we talk about her for a second?
Ilene Pereira, here's the thing. When she first hit the scene, they're like, okay, she's Alex Pereira's sister, but what does that mean? Like, can she actually fight?
Knocks people. I mean, dude, she's a beast.
She's knocking people out, and she fights with the same style he fights.
She has the same left hand. It's crazy.
She has the same aura as him. Ilene Pereira's just fascinating. She stands like him. She strikes like him, and her left hook is just as powerful. She is knocking girls out. And look, I'll tell you this. When it comes to female fighting, the knockout power is lower. They're smaller, they're skinnier. It's not going to be
just statistically. There's much less knockout.
She's knocking out everybody. I don't understand
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I saw a clip of her, I think it was a couple months ago, knocking someone out. I think it was in the first round. It's just like...
unbelievable. She's unbelievable. And to the point where UFC is showing promos of KarateCombat because of her.
She's not in the UFC.
Yeah, she's not in the UFC. She's with us, and she loves fighting for KarateCombat, but UFC is showing her promos at their events, and it's so cool. It means so much to me. And, man, I absolutely love the Pereira family. They're amazing. Team Chama all the way.
I love to hear that. He'll get it done in the rematch.
Definitely.
So, I wanted to shift gears a little bit. So there's some rumors about a new stadium, a new KarateCombat stadium, and it's tied to your ventures. It's called the Awesome Arena. So that's what I'm going to call it. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Where's it going to be? What's happening? Are the rumors true?
The rumors are true. Now, what happened is we got a great partnership with Bonk. You know, it's a meme coin out there. So Bonk wants to build us a stadium. And this is going to be for the Goat Shed team to train out of, as well as sort of our apex for KarateCombat. So we're going to be throwing live events there every month for KarateCombat, as well as simultaneously we'll have training camps for all these different fighters. You know, so it's really great. Not only the Goat Shed will be training out of there, but we're going to welcome all fighters from any camps. Bring your coach. We have dorms. You guys can live here. You can train here, all of that. So it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. Just like the UFC has their apex and their PI, we're going to have our own.
Is it going to be, where is it going to be here in Florida?
In Miami.
I'd love to hear that. Okay, so here's a question. Everyone knows in Miami, if you're a Miami person, there's always questions about where new things going to be built. Right, I remember there was the big controversy because the new soccer stadium is being built right next to the airport. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, it's like the worst plot of land." I know one of my teachers was complaining because his golf course got taken over, whatever. But lots of people are just like, whatever. So where in Miami is it going to be built?
That's funny you mentioned that because that soccer stadium is going to be built in about, I think it's 2 years.
It's going to be done by the World Cup. They're going to have it done.
Okay. Well, I wanted to get a spot in there too when I leave this spot. So I'm hoping to sign a shorter lease here. I should get the news today if we can get that done. Sign a shorter lease so I can jump to that soccer stadium. I want to have a little part in there.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, I've been talking to the city of Doral about that. So that's funny you know all this stuff. That's crazy. But basically, we're in the outskirts of Doral. I would say about 6 minutes away from the city place, from Doral City Place.
Oh, that's a great
Very
spot.
close. Very
that's
close. Yeah, it's close to everything. So it's definitely right there.
I'd love to hear that. And so you're going to have it as like kind of like how the UFC has the PI and Apex.
Exactly.
Are you going to be doing smaller cards there like how they do it? Or is it going to, because I would imagine that if you're having space for dorms, for training, all this different stuff, you're not going to be having like massive events there.
Exactly. You're right. We were thinking about having our fight nights there, but what's happening right now is I'm trying a new strategy here. See, a lot of fighters complain about activity, right? In a lot of different organizations, they fight 1 time a year, 2 times a year, different things like that. I've reduced the size of our roster to the elite so that they can fight 4 or 5 times a year. And I want them just going. So I haven't announced it yet. I'll announce it with you here. Our first event at our sort of Apex, at KarateCombat Apex, is going to be a heavyweight tournament featuring a former Glory heavyweight world champion. He's on one side of the bracket, Robelis Despain, who's just knocking people out in 3 seconds.
Oh my gosh, former UFC fighter as
yes,
well, right?
Former UFC fighter and Olympic medalist is on the other side of the bracket. We're creating this heavyweight tournament. That's going to be the debut of our Apex event.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be unbelievable. As well as we have a lineup. We have Shazab fighting for his world title. He's going to be defending his world title against Luis Roca, another world champion. We're going to have Ailini Pereira fighting. There's so many big fights. So what's crazy is although it's supposed to be a smaller show, it's not really going to be. It's still going to be some
there's still going to be
bangers.
some amazing cards.
It's going to be
nasty.
Because
I feel like with a lot of promotions, what they do on the smaller cards is like I feel like as a fight fan these days, I feel like most of the time I'm only incentivized to tune into pay-per-views, right? Because I feel like most fight nights, I'm like, I don't really know anyone who's fighting. There's no like big names, and even like the main event, I'm like, Usually I'll still tune in because I'm like, I want to know everyone, and also I feel like fight nights are one of the best ways to spot new talent, or watching the Apex, because then you can see people on their come up and spotting those people in the early prelims of even like a fight night. But it's just like, man, these days, like getting good cards is hard.
It's very
I would imagine
hard.
as a promoter. So I was going to ask, like, what is it like to put together a card? Because you see it with the big promotions, you see it with Karate Camp, all these promotions. Talked about it a little bit with Shazib, but like you have people pull out of fights, you have elite rosters, but there's people who don't want to fight each other. And you have all these different complications because it's not like you're moving chess pieces. You're moving with people.
Of course.
People complain about pay. People complain about location. People complain about time. All this different stuff. How do you manage all that?
There's a lot there. You mentioned a lot that we got to touch on. We got to touch on pay. We got to touch on a lot of different things. But one thing I'll talk about is KarateCombat is a crypto-run league, right? We have the Karate token, and the token holders run the league. One thing that I think will be revolutionary for fight sports, we're going to put to a vote, and I'm hoping that it's going to be voted for. I want to do open matchmaking. I'm tired of fighters declining fights. I'm tired of it. So instead of doing that, no problem. You want to decline a fight, we're going to do this publicly. If it's a big fight, I'm going to put it on social media. This guy accepted, this guy declined. This is the reason. And deal with the consequences, because we're not going to hide the truth anymore. So if you want to decline a fight, let's do it publicly. So from now on, this is something we're going to push for: open matchmaking, get the audience involved, get everyone talking, and that way the right fighters with the right mindset work their way to the top versus these guys that are trying to play it safe.
I mean, it's also just such a big problem. Even the promotions where they have the money, they're just scared. Like, they don't want to fight.
You're
Which
right.
I would imagine, like, I feel like they get a lot of hate for it. And I feel like as someone looking in, I'm just like, well, there's also a degree of like, imagine you're like, you're in a promotion and your matchmaker is like, okay, you're fighting Khamzat Chimaev. I remember this UFC had a massive problem booking him fights because nobody wanted to fight him. Same thing I would imagine with if you're Dana and you have to book Alex Pereira. Imagine being the guy. It's like, oh yeah, you're fighting Alex Pereira in 2 months. Good luck with that.
Exactly.
So it's just like, there's part of me that's also like, it's hard for the fighters, but also like, you can't, if you're in the top of a promotion, you want to be the best in the world. You have to fight the best in the world.
Of course.
And it's like it's the only way for there to be good fights and for the fans to be happy and to figure out who is the best in the world.
The most disappointing thing, you gotta know this about KarateCombat. It's evolved a lot, especially since I've joined and my team's joined. What we've done is we've evolved the roster. The old KarateCombat roster.
How big is each weight division?
Ooh, maybe there's 40, 50 people each weight division, something like that. So a total of 250 fighters on the roster, something to that effect. And really trying to make it elite. That's what we're trying to do, and constantly we're bringing in new talent, trying people out, but we only sign the elite. We're very, very careful about that. In the beginning, I was too open, signing everybody, but no more. We'll do a 1-fight deal, check you out, see how you are, and if you deserve a contract, hey, it'll be a life-changing contract, and you can make a real career for yourself. But I'll tell you this, the old KarateCombat roster, there were some elite fighters. I would say out of the 150 fighters they had, maybe 10 were elite. The rest were not fighters. They were point karate guys that have never gotten punched in their face in their life, never cut weight in their life, and they're trying to compete professionally. And what happened is when I took over, and now we've opened up the rules. Now you're allowed to elbow, you're allowed to knee to the face, you're allowed to thigh, all these different things.
The things that the fans love and that make fights fights. Yeah.
I modified the rules. I've evolved the rules. The old roster got scared. They don't want to fight the fighters from the new roster. It's a very frustrating thing. And we recently had a situation, and like I said, look, I understand fighters so well because I was in their shoes. I know how to put myself in their shoes. Not only that, I coach fighters. Fighters live in my gym. I know what the struggle's like. So I had a fighter reach out to me and say, look, Asim, I have no money for camp. You offered me a title fight, but I just don't have the money. I gave him an advance on his purse.
Wow.
Okay, that's no promotion in the world's doing that.
No, I was going to say, I've never heard of that before.
And I'll never do it again. But I gave him an advance on his purse, right? I said, look, I know what it's like. I have fighters living in the gym. We pay for their meal plans. I get it. I gave him money. I said, have a good training camp. So we gave him an advance. When it comes to the fight, he shows up 4 days before and says, I can't make weight. I said, okay, you can't make weight. What can you fight at? He wants to fight 10 pounds over the weight limit. He wants to fight, instead of 35, he wants to fight 45.
That's crazy.
And I said, look, man, this is a title fight main event. I gave you a title shot. You had 9-week notice, 10-week notice. We did a face-off 10 weeks ago. How are you telling me that you can't make this weight? So I said, look, I called the champion down. His name Arturo Vergara. He was the defending champion. I called Arturo Vergara down. He's our champion. I said, okay, weigh in. Arturo weighs in. I said, Jesus, weigh in. He weighs in. This is 3 days before weigh-ins, right? I want to check their weights. Arturo was heavier, ready to make 135. This guy was lighter and was refusing.
Didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it.
But he got paid already. I paid him already. So he had no motivation to make weight. He said, either we're going to fight at this weight or I'm not fighting. I said, are you serious right now? It was a mess. We got to a point where we said, look, how about you do 5 pounds? You can meet at 140, okay? He's going to take a percentage of your purse. No, I don't want to give a percentage. I said, listen to me, man. He was in a room full of fighters. Our cameraman was on Ultimate Fighter, the TV show. Our cameraman, people don't know that, in KarateCombat was on Ultimate Fighter.
Everyone in the room knows how to fight.
Everyone in the room knows. And I said, listen to me. You're looking like a very unprofessional fake fighter right now, because in this room, that's Eileen Perez. She's number 6 ranked in the UFC right now. She missed weight by 0.5 and we paid 20%. 20% for 0.5, she missed weight. And we fought and we won our fight. She's number 6 in the world. Here right now, this is a guy, he was on Ultimate Fighter. He's cut weight. He's never missed weight in his career. You're telling me this is your title shot. This will change your life. You're not willing to make weight and you weigh less than the champion. He's like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to end up in the hospital. People don't know this. Eileen, the girl that twerks after she fights, I don't know if you ever saw her in the UFC. She's my student. Number 6, number 7 ranked in the UFC. We're on a 5-fight win streak. We've ended up in the hospital twice. People don't know that. We fought and we won.
But
It's
winning
normal.
it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's normal. Fighters after weigh-ins, it's always bad. It's always bad. So he kept giving excuse after excuse after excuse. It was an absolute joke where, to the point where one fighter had to interrupt. Actually, our light heavyweight champion interrupted Sam Alvey. He's like, look, man, this is so embarrassing that you should never fight again. If this is your decision, you should never fight again because this is that embarrassing. And we called it. We said, it's over. Cut your contract. We paid him for no reason. We gave him an advance on his purse. That's abusing, kindness. And it happens all the time, man. It really happens. I've overextended myself for so many people, and I've gotten taken advantage of. I will never give an advance again to a fighter. That man right there ruined it.
I mean, what's so interesting is when you look at fighters and how money changes them. So you have fighters who, when they get the money, they lose the will to fight. They don't want to fight. They don't want to do anything anymore. The only fights that they'll take are easy, quote unquote, easy fights or exhibition bouts. They lost the game. But then on the other hand, you have fighters who make the money and they're still like, I want to be the best in the world.
You're right.
And it's just
Right.
like, I think a great example of that's like Demetrius Johnson before he retired. I mean, this guy was fighting everyone. Left the UFC, but still ended up dominating one. All these different things. You have Alex Pereira right now who's fighting the best of the best in the world. He's making so much money. And the fact that these guys still have the hunger and the will to compete is just so impressive.
Well, look, there's 3 main aspects to fighting. Remember, look, I'm a coach. I'm a full-time coach. I'm a full-time president. As a coach, I really try to put each fighter in a category. There's 3 categories that motivates a fighter usually. Okay, 1 is fame. They want to get famous. 2nd could be they want to make a lot of money. 3rd, they want legacy. And I'll tell you what, the fighters that are focused on legacy, they never get burnt out because they're fighting for something greater than a paycheck. They're fighting for something greater than just fame. There's something more to it. They want to do something different. They want to do something special. And fighting for legacy, those guys don't burn out. I've seen a lot of fighters, they come to this country from another country, they make one paycheck and they're gone. It's crazy, But the guys that, like, for example, Shaz Abrin, it's unbelievable. He's not just fighting for fame. He's not just fighting for money. He's fighting for something even greater than his own legacy. He's fighting for a whole country.
His people, I mean, he's a trailblazer in Pakistani
It's crazy.
combat sports.
He may not like that I say this. We actually have video of this. He may not like that I say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I remember when he started off, he wasn't very good when he came to our gym. He was pretty terrible. He was losing to our amateurs. And he had a big fight ahead of him. And already the whole country was waiting to see what he was going to do. And at that time, I was his coach. I wasn't KarateCombat president. And I'll never forget, he did so bad in sparring one day. We were in the corner. And I said, look, man, I know what you're going through. You have a big weight on your shoulder. You're not fighting for yourself like these other guys. You have extra weight. You're fighting for your people. And he starts getting into tears. He starts crying. And it's so much pressure to fight for something greater than yourself like that, because if he loses, he's going to let down a lot of people. There's a lot at stake. He can't lose once. He can't have a bad performance. It's really like that, So he had that pressure, but that pressure is what caused him to do something really great. And he's the first Pakistani combat sports world champion ever. That's never existed. You're talking about one of the top 5 organization on the planet, and he has a title. It's crazy what he's done for his people, and they've really rallied behind him because of that.
So I'm going to transition into the last segment of our show, which I call hitting the speed back. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. There's a tongue twister there.
No
a couple
problem.
of quick questions there. So the first one being, if you could scrap with any fighter, historical or present right now, legend, not legend, who would it be? All time.
Oh my God. Now,
In
is
their
this
prime.
Is this a sparring or we have to scrap? Like we have to fight? Like we're
No,
going to fight.
We'll say sparring.
Okay, but sparring, because if you tell me we have to fight, I'm not going to want to spar, or I'm not going to want to fight Alex Pereira or GSP or Khabib.
John Jones.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? But if we're going to spar, who would I want to spar? Man, it would be a dream to spar Khabib. And because I want to just feel it. Like, what is it like when he holds your wrist? What is it like when he grabs a seatbelt on you or gets you in a body lock? That feeling must be terrible, because when I watch him fight, he looks like he's drowning his opponents. You know what I mean? It's just such a different type of fighter.
Was it he said, I'm going to take you into deep waters and or something like that?
That's what he did to everybody. So it's just like, look, we grapple every day, you know, at the gym and all this stuff, but he was different. He had his hands on people, and the best athletes would just gas out. So I would love to move around with him and really get to feel that pressure.
It's a good choice. What's a chill day look like for you when you're not being President Awesome or running the empire?
No, that I've never had that. I've never had that. You know, I'll never forget when my wife and I got married. My mom forced us on vacation. She bought a cruise. I didn't want to leave Miami. You know, she got a cruise. It was like a 3-day cruise, and I started going crazy after day 1. You know, and my wife and I were on our phone day 2, just working. We just couldn't calm our minds down like that. Yeah. So a chill day. I enjoy coaching. I get into a flow state when I'm coaching. I lose track of time. You know, like I don't eat breakfast. I wake up 6 a.m. I do my workout, go straight to the gym. 8 a.m. I'm coaching. I don't end up eating till 2 p.m. You know, but not because I'm trying to starve myself. I forget about food
because you're just focused. You're so many different things you're focused on.
I'm in a flow state. I'm so focused. I don't drink water. I don't eat nothing. I'm just focused. So I love what I do every day. So although it's a grind, I love it, man. So I don't have an off day. I really don't. There's no off day. 0.
That's powerful. So what's one word for your, I mean, it's a little early in your journey, but what's one word for your legacy? What is it and why?
One word. Jeez. I guess grit would be the word, because no matter how hard something gets, we'll push through it. You know, we've been through some really hard times, my wife and I, and we push through over and over, and it's just nonstop. And like you say, it's like, oh, what do you do on your day off? There's no day off. We're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and we're obsessed with doing better. And what I make sure is every emotion I feel funnels me back into our purpose.
It's love of the game.
That's what it is. So look, listen to this. If we lose, for example, let's talk about coaching. If we lose a big fight, that will motivate me to get back to coaching Monday and push my fighters hard. If we win a big fight, that will motivate me to come back Monday and push really hard. I'm not like these other people that'll go out there and party and celebrate a big win or crawl into a corner and cry over a big loss. Every emotion I feel funnels me back to my purpose. My wife's the same way. And my fighters, that's the philosophy I teach. If you're excited, you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, bring all of that back to your purpose in life. And that's how we're going to find success. So grit, that's the one word I'll say. That's the subject I'd want.
That's an awesome way to end the episode. President Awesome. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. Turn on the notification bell and drop a comment. Catch you guys in the next one.